All right, folks, we're going to get started in a minute or so. So please take this opportunity to fill out those polls if you have not already, and we'll go over some of the results when we start at 2 p.m. Okay, folks, thank you, and welcome to the TAM webinar series on decision support tools. Hopefully you are able to hear now. If not, I don't know how I will be able to know if you can't hear me, but I'm going to change the note from the voice over IP to the audio test, so those that maybe can't hear me will see that we've changed some things. I'm ending the poll now, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the results that are there. Thank you all for joining us. It looks like we have a majority, or it looks pretty split, between Tier 1 and Tier 2 operators with some group plan sponsors. There seems to be a lot of other. I'm assuming that's either a NPO or potentially a consultant or academics. Folks, I'm going to go ahead and clear the chat since we have established that everyone can hear. And if you have any questions relevant to the webinar, you can put them in the chat pod at any time during the presentations, and we will get to them at the end. If you notice in the upper left-hand corner, there are presentations from today. There is an audio download if you are having audio issues, as well as the presentations from SARTA and CDTA. So back to the polls, we seem to have a pretty even split between Tier 1 and Tier 2. Looks like most of you guys are in the writing phase or the planning phase when it comes to TAM implementation. And as far as decision support tools, not a lot of folks filled that out, but we have a lot of folks that are in the no category, or they're using maybe Excel, I saw a couple of times, transit asset prioritization tool. As you'll know, there's these polls are anonymous, so there's no tracing back to the person who said what tool they were using, just so that you are aware of that. Looks like there's some actual brand names in there as well. We just wanted to get kind of a sense of what you guys are using or considering in terms of supporting your TAM plan implementation as well as your asset management. All right, so I'm going to end that poll as well and welcome you guys officially to the webinar. And today's speakers are Debbie Swickert from SARTA. I should know what that stands for, but she's going to tell us in a minute. And she's going to give us a presentation on how they completed their TAM plan using the Small Systems template that is available for download on the TAM webpage. And also Dan Holdsworth from CDTA is going to talk to us about how they created an in-house decision support tool. I do want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, And at the end of, or at the conclusion of the webinar, once it's edited, we will post it onto our TAM webpage, which you can see the URL at the bottom of this slide. And I'd also encourage you, there are some new resources that are available on that webpage to go and check those out. So our presenters today are going to talk about how they determined was the best approach to use the data that they had or that they felt they could collect, some of the challenges that they faced in selecting the approach that they did, and some lessons learned from the efforts that they took. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie, and she's going to give you some information about the approach that they took. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shadoni. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Debbie Swickard. I'm with the Grants Manager with Stark Area Regional Transit Authority in Canton, Ohio, and that's what SARTA stands for. We're a Tier 2 operation with 34 fixed routes. Our Pro line is county-wide in Stark County. We have a service area of about 576 miles. Our main building is houses our administration, our maintenance facility, and our bus garage. We have 4 transit stations located throughout Stark County, and we have approximately 122 buses and support vehicles. We also have 1 diesel, 2 CNG, and 1 hydrogen fueling stations. Not only are we doing a transit asset management plan for our agency, we're doing one for our subrecipients with a separate group TAM plan. Okay, why use the FTA template? There are a lot of different sources out there. Well, we were deciding what we wanted to do, and we looked at the cost, staffing, getting the targets put together, what will we need, how can we do it, and who will actually be using the plan, and can it help it? We looked at the cost. Well, if you're a smaller agency, most of you have very limited funding, and the FTA template is already done. There are no out-of-pocket costs. As far as staffing, with being a Tier 2 or smaller organization, your staff wears very many hats. And for this, it worked well for us because it took a small amount of staff to do. We had my COO and myself that put together our TAM plan for our agency, and I was able to take care of the group TAM plan for our subrecipients. And as far as maintaining, there's just one person that needs to maintain it.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Debbie. Do you think you could turn up the volume on your microphone? There appears to be a couple of folks that are having a hard time hearing. Thank you, and I apologize.
Can you hear me all right now?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Most of the data is already available for setting your targets, whether it's for rolling stock or for your facilities, the FTA useful bench life, work orders, maintenance records, cost analysis records, or visual inspections. Now, for SARTA in the state of Ohio, we have to report on our vehicles every year. So for us, we have a vehicle guideline of how to gauge and rate each one of the vehicles. We also have the sub-component rating summary that can be used for facilities to gauge and put your targets. All right. Then we looked at, well, who's actually going to use the plan? For us, our executive team, they're going to look at it from a high-level overall agency picture to see what we're going to be needing in at least 5 years out. They want to see everything from high level. For the maintenance department, they can see the exact same information and anticipate future requirements of vehicles that are going to be retired, new ones coming in, building that needs to be taken care of. The finance department will have the budget projection needs for 5 years out, so they can actually see what is going on and what they need to look for down the road. For grants department, they can look at needs for future funding opportunities in order to take care of the needs of bus replacements or the buildings that are going to be needing work done on. We'll also need this information for your NTD reporting and also for your state reporting. Now, if you use the first TAM template, you may be hesitant to use this one, but I can guarantee you that this template doesn't work at all like the last template did. This one works, and it's user-friendly. So you decide to go ahead and go with the template. So let's get started. The best suggestions that I can give you are to plan what you will add before you start. Go ahead and take all the information from your inventory, your mileage, your building, everything that you have, and get every document together first. Take your time entering your information into the template. This is not a normal, ordinary Excel document. It has a lot of intricate macros behind the scenes, so don't get discouraged if something doesn't go through all right for you. Make sure you don't add any or delete any lines. Don't have any blank lines within your asset list, and follow the steps for each page. You want to update in the proper order of Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and so forth. And you may need to start over. We actually had to do it twice before we got a final product. We figured out all the differences and took care of it. All right. Once you follow the instructions and complete the yellow tabs, that's your bones for your TAM plan with the FTA template. Once that is done and you've completed everything, your TAM plan is complete. And now you have an updatable document. There's been a lot of discussion on how often a TAM plan should be updated. Should it be annually, every 3 or 4 years? That's completely up to your agency what you wish to do. For SARTA, we're going to be updating the TAM plan annually. The same information that's needed to update the TAM plan is normally what you need for updating your NTD reporting, and if your state is like our state in Ohio, you need to report information there also. So it just makes sense for us to update that plan annually, and everyone in all the departments have consistent, clean information. All right. These are some of the challenges that came up, and not necessarily when you're building your TAM, the template, but when you're updating the information. And this isn't in the instructions, so I'd like to give you a couple of clues on what you can and can't do when you're updating. Even though this is an Excel document, the Excel doesn't work the same as it does in a regular document. But for updating your mileage or any of your target information, it does. So you can either put in brand new mileage or you can add your annual mileage to your existing mileage that you had to begin with. But you've got to remember to finish, summarize, and continue. If you don't do those steps, the information will not flow forward for you in the report, and it just won't update. This is where it gets a little bit trickier, because to add equipment, vehicles, or facilities, you can't treat the document as an Excel document. And when I was first going through it, I wasn't sure exactly how to do anything. So I inserted lines where my other vehicles were. I needed to insert two vehicles, 1715 and 1716. I insert the information, but I knew that there were macros and information in the cells. I copied a cell above and put it into those two cells, but hoping that it would work. After I did the finish, summarize, and continue, I looked at the condition assessment, and those vehicles didn't come across. So you might have that happen when you're doing your report. As you can see, 1715 and 1716 didn't come across to Chapter 3. All right, back to the drawing board. In order to have any information, equipment, vehicles, facility, whatever it is, if you have assets that you want to add, you need to add them to the very bottom of the list. Once you've added them there and you click Finish, Summarize, and Continue, they come across to the continuing throughout the report. And as you can see, they're in the proper order. I didn't have to do anything. The system already knew. So make sure that you don't insert information into the body of the template. Add it to the very bottom. Now, to retire and remove an asset, just like you can't insert a line into Chapter 2, you can't decrease, you can't delete a line. So how do you get them out of your inventory? All right, I took a little bit of trial and error. Since you can't delete the lines, I thought, okay, clear the line. When I cleared the line and did Finish, Summarize, and Continue, you'll see that the information below Vehicle 1240 did not come across. Anytime you have a break in the information will not flow forward on your report. So in order to get that taken care of, take the information below your cleared line, copy and paste it to your cleared line. So you have one continuous flow of information. There, again, Finish, Summarize, and Continue. There's got to be one continuous flow for information to calculate throughout the document. And as you see, all the vehicles below 1240 are now showing up in the rest of the document. When you get finished either adding inventory or removing inventory, you want to make sure that the information is flowing continuously through your report. And you can do that through your totals. As you can see on Chapter 2, Capital Asset Inventory, we added 2 buses. I started with 52 buses. We added 2 buses. There are now 54 there. I can see that there are 54 on the TAM plan too. So that works. On the cutaway bus, we removed 1. We started with 53. We now have 52. And we also have that on the TAM plan too. So I know that my information is flowing across. When you're putting in your information for your asset increase, your average value should go up. But sometimes when you're decreasing your assets or retiring them, depending on the average cost of it to begin with, it might not increase or decrease on your average cost on your vehicle. If your information does not match from your informational section to your TAM plan, there are a few things you need to redo. Did you follow the steps for each page? That's Finish, Summarize, Continue, or Summarize and Continue, depending on the requirements of that page. Did you update in the proper order? Chapter 1, Chapter 2, so on. If something doesn't come across correctly, go back to Chapter 1 and redo the steps through all the chapters. And when you get finished with it and you're on your last page, the macros behind the scenes are going to go crazy. So just leave your screen alone. You're going to have a lot of forms that are going to be jumping all over the place. It's calculating everything out. And when it stops, you're going to have a clean plan. Lessons learned. Plan what you'll add before you start your document. Take your time entering the information. If you take your time and you've got everything planned out, you're going to find it's going to be a lot smoother as you're putting things in. Remember that this is not a regular Excel document. There are a lot of intricate macros behind the scenes, so don't get discouraged. You want to make sure that you follow the steps for each page and either finish, summarize, and continue, or summarize and continue, depending on the instructions on that particular page. Update in the proper order, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, etc. And you may need to start over. It's fine. It's frustrating, but you'll have a clean product when you get done. Don't insert or delete any lines of information. Don't leave any lines blank. And once you've created it, you've got a great updatable plan or even a group plan. Now for us, this information will be able to be disseminated across different departments, and they'll all be using the same information continuously. So we don't have one department thinking this and another department thinking that. So it's a great tool to use. If you don't have the template and need a copy of the template, you can find it on the FTA TAM information on their webpage, the Asset Management Guide for Small Providers. I would highly recommend using this if you don't have anything in place, if you're a Tier 2, or if you're doing for a group plan. It's a usable tool. And if you've got any questions, I'm around to help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Debbie. All right, our next presenter, Dan Holworth, is going to talk about a customized tool that he created for CDTA.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me. My name is Dan Holdsworth. I am a budget analyst with Capital District Transportation Authority in Albany, New York. For some context about us and our assets, we currently operate 4 facilities and 2 train stations in a service area of almost 2,200 square miles. Our service areas span across 4 cities, Albany, Schenectady, Troy, and Saratoga Springs. Based on this sprawl, we actually operate divisions in each of Albany, Schenectady, and Troy. And within these buildings, there is both administrative and maintenance operations taking place. So from an asset management standpoint, that means each building has its own share of HVAC systems, maintenance lifts, fueling tanks, paint booths, etc. Along with that, we have one other building that is mainly housing our customer service sales operation, and then, like I said, the 2 train stations that Amtrak actually operates out of. We do not operate. For a fleet, we are comprised of 187 40-foot vehicles, 8 articulated buses, 31 paratransit vehicles, and 21 commuter buses. We operate 1 BRT line. We employ roughly 690 employees, 400 of those being operators. And for CDTA, in 2017, we were awarded Mid-Size Transit System of the Year from APTA. Prior to transit asset management, CDTA has been taking steps towards understanding and figuring out how to replace capital assets in the most efficient manner. In 2010, we transitioned into what we called the Strategic Fleet Replacement Plan. What this meant was that instead of replacing an entire fleet of vehicles in only a 2 to 3 or 4 year time frame, we started replacing a minimum of 12 vehicles per year. What this did was help eliminate prior concerns of needing substantial capital in a short period of time and allowed for a spread of the age of our vehicles. For our facilities, we performed in 2005 a condition assessment, which we hired an outside firm to come in, basically evaluate and determine the preventative maintenance and replacement schedule for all of our facilities. That is actually something we still roughly do every 5 years, and has been crucial in the way they maintain the facilities. From that, annually we look at 4 categories for the capital budgeting, those being age, useful life, condition, and cost to maintain. These are evaluated by an executive team in our organization, and then ultimately the recommendations are brought to our board. So that was really the driving factor on how we decided that we would go into doing a decision support tool in-house. We had been progressively moving towards better analyzing our assets without actually putting physical numbers to them necessarily. So how did we get to developing those? We looked at 4 main areas that needed focus to develop the tool that we have now. Data being one, which was basically the inputs that were required to solve our problem. Problem being we needed to be able to score our assets. Institutional knowledge, who has that knowledge of our assets? It's crucial to have the people that have the historical data for your organization. Then project management, who would be the facilitator of what we considered this to be a standalone project for the organization. And then ultimately a tool that we needed to develop, and who and what tool that would be to solve the problem. So data. How did we define data for this project? Well, we determined there were certain attributes that we wanted for good data in building this tool. We need the data to be organized, mostly meaning it really should be electronic. It shouldn't be scattered throughout your organization on paperwork and whatever. It should be accessible, which goes along with the organized. It should be structured and digital, meaning that the data should be in some sort of software program. It works best to have it in a database or a work order management system. We currently use Spear for work order management. This allows us to strengthen the data integrity, and it also fits into daily operations for both our maintenance and our facilities departments. It makes it easy for IT staff to help us work to get the data out as well. As for institutional knowledge, as I said, it's exactly what you'd expect. It's the expertise of knowing our capital assets through the tenure with us at the organization. It allows for us to have organized methods and procedures for maintaining strong data integrity, and ultimately sets up those rules that we'll move forward and use. As for project management, as I said, we treated this as a standalone project. So we set this up as a schedule. We did a short turnaround, which is also why we decided to go in-house. We, based on some prior understanding of audits that had been happening, decided that we needed to, in short turnaround, within less than a year, get a tool ready to go that we could be comfortable with moving forward on and making the TAM plan. So for that reason, budget was not so much of a constraint. It was more of just coordination and communication within our organization and getting staff to understand that time would be necessary early on, and then generally picking a specific person to oversee that project, that being me right now. I also instituted having an ERP administrator from our IT team, which helped do coding, which we'll talk about for the tool development. So he was, as you can see, the tool maker, we're calling it, just as a high level. That person needs to understand the data. They had a very key role in doing this for us. They were able to understand where the data was, and able to manipulate it and code it out of the system into our decision support tool. So what does that look like for us? How did we get to the tool that we utilized? We basically broke it down. We wanted a final score. So we said we want 1 to 5. That was where we started off on our conversation. From that, we decided that the main categories that would go into our final score: age, performance, condition, and level of maintenance. Each of those categories carrying a weight to the final score and also carrying a 1 to 5. So we initially started this with our maintenance department, and with their help, we had determined that these specific categories within each of those 4 for that final score would make up and carry different weights to be able to give them a final score of each asset. This allows us to really weight according to what is happening in the organization, as well as what's happening in each department. That is, I think, a very crucial thing to take away from this. We now also, along with maintenance, then can also do this for facilities while looking at different categories within that age, performance, condition, and level of maintenance. As you can see here, for facilities right now, age and condition are our main focusing points for any facility asset that we have. For that reason, we can put a higher weight to each of those, and then also put different emphasis as time goes on. If we are in a good position with our fleet and decide that we want to focus more attention on facilities, we have that ability in-house with the people here, myself being the main one, to adjust weighted percentages as we go to do final scores. So what does that look like as a final product? Here you can see some maintenance breakdowns. So what we did is we put all of our, basically our fleet and any other vehicle and type of item that maintenance maintains, and we were able to categorize them into levels of, or a ranking of that 1 to 5, and see where we fall and what is crucial at this time in the organization. We can do the same thing with our facilities. It's nice because it gives us repeatable metrics within Excel after extracting the data from our work order management system. It is timely. We can do it at any point during the year or even on a day, and we can adjust as the needs of the organization change. I think that is a crucial thing in doing this. We didn't want to constrain our own people or our ability to continually update our assets by a one-time tool. And that's really, I think, where we got with it. And I would say that's good for me. So I thank you, everybody. If you have any questions.
All right, thanks, Dan. Now we get to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and I'm going to kind of go back up to the top and try to find where the questions begin. Please feel free to continue to add questions to this chat pod, and both Debbie and Dan will be able to answer your questions. Let's see. Okay, so the first question that I see in here is, I believe, for Debbie. Debbie and Dan, if you could both unmute your line so that you could answer questions. The person who maintains your TAM plan, is this a specialized position, or is it a person who has another responsibility?
For myself here at CDTA, this is, we rolled this into basically daily operation. We do not have a specified person. I, as the budget analyst, kind of fell into this as our former grants manager that originally started it had left the company. So we tried to make this, while having one key stakeholder, not need to be a specific job.
And for SARTA, we're pretty much the same. I'm the individual that will be maintaining it. I'm the grants manager. Going forward, if I'm not with the company, it'll go back to the COO to see who's going to be taking care of it. But there isn't a specific person to do it. Just I do the NTD reporting as well as the state reporting. So it seemed natural that I would be doing the TAM updates also, since I have all the information.
Well, it sounds like you guys are wearing many hats. This next commenter, I believe it's a comment versus a question. Earlier, and this is during Debbie's presentation, he notes that you said earlier FTA's template was user-friendly, but then you said it took 2 tries and said don't get discouraged when things don't go right.
Correct.
I don't know if that's necessarily a question or a statement, or did you want to address that at all, Debbie?
Yeah. When it comes to not getting discouraged, when we went through it, we didn't have all of the quirks down, because the instructions are great, but there are some pieces that are not there. So you kind of learn trial and error. And also, if you don't put your information in correctly to begin with, it doesn't flow correctly. So you might have to do it. And if you don't know the pieces on making sure that you do things in the proper order, Chapter 1 and so on, and making sure you update everything as you're going, things don't flow at all. And when you get an end result, it doesn't work. So that was our trial and error of figuring out what we had to do. And it did. It took a couple of times. But after we got it down, and hopefully some of our pitfalls that we ran into, I've been able to stop it so that you don't have those pitfalls if you decide to use the template.
That's what I was going to say, Debbie, is that also your efforts to fill it out and then this webinar to identify some of those lessons learned and those really key pieces, along with NTI's webinar provided by the actual developer of the tool, together should provide a lot of technical assistance to anyone that is interested in using that tool. So the next question was, again for SARTA, is the scale used for your condition rating of the rolling stock given by your state or created by your agency?
For our rolling stock, that was originally done by our state. It was some of our reporting, and I believe there's a copy of it on the peer file on the TAM. I think they uploaded it there, Ms. Shadoni?
That's correct. It's on the peer library under the vehicle condition assessment heading.
Yeah. It is very useful. Every year the vehicles progressively, I won't say decline, but as they age, they age. So the numbers, you can see visually how is your engine doing, your work orders, your maintenance, your cost analysis. All that information plays into those numbers. You're actually looking at the vehicle and gauging what its rating should be every single year so that you've got a continuous report for that particular vehicle or your whole rolling stock, as a matter of fact.
Okay, there seems to be a couple of question and answers between Casey or Cassie, Natalie, and Susan about the term light data tool versus the small systems template. I will point out that there is a fleet management tab in the small systems template, which could help depending on the size of your fleet, and since it's directed at small systems, a smaller system that could help you to determine replacement cycles, or at least put the data in there so that you could see what those patterns are. So there are some supportive elements to that template, but as I believe it's Natalie points out, that the term light tool is definitely a decision support tool. So moving on to the next question. Where is the next question? A lot of talk about the sound. Okay, here's one from Lisa, but I think that Rachel answered that for her about where to find the asset management guide for small providers. Debbie had a screenshot of the version that was updated last year to be in alignment with the final rule. And all of those materials can be found on the TAM webpage. Okay, so this is a question for Dan. One of the attendees wanted to know if you could repeat the name of the vendor or version of EAM software you're using.
Yeah, we are currently utilizing Spear. I don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure it's a trapeze program, but we will be transitioning off of that at some point soon because I'm almost positive it's no longer going to be supported. But currently it's Spear. SPEAR.
Okay, here's a question for both of you guys. John wants to know if either of you are willing to share your finalized TAM plan.
Yes. SARTA will.
I would say yes. I don't have one. That is my actual steps I'm working on right now. The tool was our ultimate goal at the beginning, and as we progress in the next couple months, we will be actually writing our TAM plans. I noticed a couple people on here made a comment or so about them working off some other ones. That is going to be my starting approach as well. So if it's out there, I will be happy to share it.
Okay, thanks, guys. And how long did it take you to develop your decision support tool, Dan?
Our tool was, it took us, I want to say like roughly about 6 months. We came up with that scoring pretty quickly and then had reoccurring meetings with both our departments on a every 2-week basis, which really is what kept driving us forward. I want to say it was about 6 months of routine meetings and pulling out data.
Okay. Someone is a 157 bus and 2 facility provider. Are there any TAM plans out there that are for similarly sized agencies? They're trying to find a good example. So I'm just throwing that out there for them. If you have one for Mary DEPPE, please let her know. The next question says that the CDTA tool appears to summarize current asset conditions. How does it support decision-making about future investment needs?
Based on that scoring, our executive team will be determining where they want to fall in with replacement of assets. We have, I know from a perspective of giving targets to our MPO, it's based on a useful life. So right now we pick percentage of vehicles we want under that staying or that don't fall outside that useful life. But it's still part of our continued conversation we're having as to where we go with the thresholds for replacement. A lot of that is obviously determined based on the funding that we have year to year.
All right, here's another question for you, Dan. Who did you use to do your facility condition assessments?
That one I saw. I have no idea. In all honesty, I've never seen the name. I've stayed out of that side of the facilities conditioning for them. We utilize what they have gone off of, so I apologize, but I do not know the name right now. I can work on finding that out and getting back to you.
Okay. It sounds like there is some background noise at someone's location, so just be aware that if you're not chatting to maybe mute your phone. A commenter asked a question, what kind of data do you collect for assets such as generators? I'm not sure. This must be for Dan, potentially for Debbie, if you are collecting information on generators, or have any suggestions for this participant.
I can speak to at least what we're doing by each facility asset. For condition, it is it's an eyes on that piece of equipment. We have a facilities manager here who oversees all the maintenance of our facilities assets, and based on that, he gives a rating, a good, fair, poor type rating to each piece of equipment in conjunction with how old that piece of equipment is.
And for SARTA, for the generator that we have, that's what we do also, and also by its useful life. So the two are compared.
Okay, great. This next question is probably more so for me than either of you guys. It says, can the Tier 2 template be used for Tier 1, or is there a data limitation? Alexi, yes, there is a data limitation, but it's pretty high. The real limitation is the fact that it's only covering the 4 elements that a Tier 2 plan would need to cover. So you'd still need to add in the other 5 elements for a Tier 1 plan. However, a comprehensive, so the way the template works is you could choose the basic or the comprehensive version. The comprehensive version actually asks a lot of questions which then can be used to support some of those other elements for Tier 1. So I would say it could be used as a starting point, but it's not as inclusive as it is for Tier 2 TAM plan requirements. Debbie, how long did it take for SARTA to complete your TAM plan?
Well, once it was decided who was going to actually be helping to do it, it took about 2 weeks. It wasn't that long at all, and that's why I'm saying if you collect all your data and you have everything ahead of time, doing the actual template and putting the plan together doesn't take that much time. It's just getting the information put together and then going from there.
So I'm not sure if this is any different, but would you say finalizing the plan took longer, or finalizing and completing to me can mean the same thing, or it could mean like getting it through your board or something of that nature? I'm not sure if this question asker is asking something different. So let's move on to one that might be somewhat different. And Maylee, if you're still on the call, you can maybe clarify what you meant by finalize. So Casey wants to know, they have a team of 4 to 5 that are going to work on this. How many months should they give themselves? They're a Tier 2, 60 vehicle and 1 facility. And I guess they mean give themselves from start to finish on developing the TAM plan. Debbie just said 2 weeks once they made the decision to use the tool. Debbie, you want to give any more insights?
Yeah, if you've got all your information together, basically you've got your inventory, you know your vehicles, you know your mileage, you know your equipment, you've got all your assets in a row. It's just putting the information down into the actual templates. That's the time-consuming part, because the template does the majority of the work.
Okay, great. So the next question asks how the TAM template spreadsheet supports future funding decisions for assets that you don't have yet but need. So this is a good question, and it's actually one of the limitations of the template. I think the term light tool may help you in terms of determining future needs, but the fleet replacement will help you with determining when you need to replace your current system. But if you're like trying to expand or support national goals, the template is mainly for developing your TAM plan, but there are some other, there is additional value there, but I think you're right that it does not fully meet that requirement or fully meet that need that you have for looking for the future. All right, there's a question, is there going to be an import NTD fleet report into the TAM template? At this time, there is not any plan to have an NTD report into the template. And then fleet net and want to import. I don't know what that means, but hopefully answering Greg's question answered your question about the way to import the NTD fleet report, or lack thereof, rather. Another participant has 180 buses, plus paratransit and 4 facilities. They're following the example on the website for MBTA and just submitting stuff related to rail. Oh, okay. I guess this is in response to the question earlier about an agency that wanted to know what other folks were doing. Let me just see if I can find who that was. Mary, D-E-P-P-E. She didn't say who her agency was, but I'm assuming that this is responding to your question about how other folks are doing their TAM plans. On the FTA guide for small providers, there are additional narratives to be completed. Okay, so again, this is responding to what Mary had asked for a comprehensive TAM plan. Is there guidance available for these different sections? Example, risk management, overhaul strategy, and acquisition renewal strategy. Heather, no, there are not any guidance documents available at that time, but I am developing technical assistance, and there is always the potential to share peer learning with some other grantees that maybe have some lessons learned in those areas. So there's a question for Debbie. Debbie, do you use third-party vehicles for service? Because they do, and she wants to know, or he wants to know if they're in the template.
No, we don't use any third party at all. I haven't seen anything in the template for third-party vehicles.
Okay, thanks. John is having a problem with the vehicle mileage showing up on the template in the same condition summary and the capital summary. All asset totals show up correctly, though. Do you have any, oh, I'm sorry, Jonah. I said John. I apologize. Do you have any suggestions for him, Debbie?
Okay, if it's not showing up, I would go back and redo your finish, summarize, and continue. Something on your update on one of your chapters didn't bring your information forward. That would be my suggestion. Going to the very beginning and start and doing your kind of pushing the information forward, because if you don't summarize and continue, the information will not go forward.
Okay, and I suggest, Jonah, that you contact Debbie directly if you're having any specific questions about this, because she's now our resident expert.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you're having any problems, please shoot me an email. We'll get together. We can either talk on the phone or go through emails. So you can get through it, believe me. And you'll still have hair at the end of it. You won't pull it all out.
That's assuming you started with it, but okay.
Yes.
So there's a question for Dan, I'm imagining, from Sheldon. Does your decision support tool allow for system expansion due to ridership increase or just strictly on-site inventory?
I'm not sure what that question means. Our tool is only pulling what we are actively utilizing in our system. So the system expansion increases, discussions are had prior to the tool being utilized.
Okay.
I guess we don't currently have we project to put this many assets into the tool or anything.
Okay. All right, folks, we've got about 8 minutes left in the webinar, so if you are thinking about typing in a question, please go ahead now, and we'll try to get to as many of the remaining questions as we can. Those we are unable to get to during the webinar time period, I will be sure to share with the presenters and get back with you with answers, even if the answers are, I don't know. So, Dan, what technology will you be transitioning to?
I'm assuming this is in regard to the moving away from SPEAR. That is yet to be determined. We need to RFP in a year or two to do that. It'll still be a work order management system.
Okay. All right, Jonah is responding as in vehicle mileages are different in those summaries, but I've already connected him to Debbie, and so I'm going to let them kind of work on that offline. Rob is asking about equipment would be an asset over $50K. Correct. I'm not sure what that's in response to. Debbie or Dan, do you know what that's in response to?
No, I do know like our support vehicles, if they're under 50,000, they become equipment. So maybe he's going on how do you classify, is it 50,000 and above is a vehicle or something else? 50 and below is equipment.
Okay, well, Rob, if you could clarify that question, that'd be useful. Is there any online training available for Term Life? Sheree, not at this time. They do have the course, the Term Life course that I think that one of the participants said is coming up in March. I don't know details about that, but you can get information, I think, from NTI online, and they should have some information about any Term Life courses, but they're in-person courses. I know they're planning to do some more. Will there be a site to relook at today's presentation? Absolutely. This webinar is being recorded. You can download the presentations themselves right now from the lower left-hand side of your screen. And this webinar with all of the questions and answers and the presentation will be posted on our webpage. Will they be available for printing? Absolutely. You can download them right now, save them to your computer, and then print them. So you can get it right now just by downloading from the lower left-hand presentation pod. Was the data first imported from Excel to the EAM software, Dan? Do you know?
The exact opposite. All of our data is within our EAM software, and we pull that out of that software and basically dump it into Excel to kind of finalize doing scoring and percentiles. But all the original data points are in the EAM software.
Okay, thanks. Patty, I'm not sure if this is a question for TAM or if this is a question for our program management office. You're asking about training or a manual for van pooling, specially only mode when you are using a van pool provider to provide your vans. I'm going to ask you to contact me offline, Ms. Shadoni Smith at dot.gov, and maybe clarify that question. Andrew wanted to respond to the third-party vehicle comment about third-party vehicles, if your agency has capital responsibility to replace those vehicles. Carrie and Eileen, I think, oh, okay, they're talking about the presentation. Charles wants to know for you, Dan, if the cost of maintenance factored over 1 year or useful life.
We look at cost of maintenance for the entirety of each item. You can do it in time frames, but it's overall on its useful life.
Okay. And how are you estimating useful life? That's not on here, but I'm just anticipating the next question.
Useful life for vehicles is specifically from FTA, so any of the 40-foot vehicles is 12 years. Facilities, it's based on the kind of industry standard for each type of asset.
Okay. Thank you. Michael brings up a really good point. Well, I don't know if it's really a good point, but I like to get this information out there. FTA has an ALI, something line item, activity line item for transit asset management. Did SARTA or CDTA seek FTA funding specifically for TAM?
SARTA did not.
We did not either.
Okay. How did SARTA get information? How do you get SARTA information? You can download the presentation currently in the lower left-hand side of your screen. If you want other information, you can let me know specifically what that is, or you can contact Debbie, and she may share that information with you.
Yeah, and my email address is on the slide.
Okay, and then the last minute, oh, he wants your TAM plan, I think is what he's asking for. Dan, will you share your Excel file? It's huge, guys, but go ahead, Dan.
Yes, it is huge. I can give breakdowns of what's in it, but all of it, the querying out from the software and everything makes it large. Ms. Shidoni can attest to that. I've sent it to her. It will lock down your computer for 20 minutes, so I don't know if you really want that.
And I just want to point out that CDTA's development of their in-house decision support tool is the subject of our most recent case study, which has been posted on our TAM webpage. So if you are interested in finding out some of the background material, information, that could be someplace to take a look. So with that, I am going to close out our webinar for today, and I would like to say thank you again to our speakers, Debbie and Dan, and all of you that participated today. With that, I am going to say good afternoon, or, oh yeah, it's afternoon for everyone. And thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.